Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. So last month I didn't do a wrap up in September, so we're going to be combining September and October and doing a September and October wrap up. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Give it a big thumbs up, subscribe, and let's get into it. I have my trusty reading journal because, to be honest, I tend to forget how I feel about books quite quickly, especially if they're under 4 stars, so I've got my reading journal just to help me a little bit. The first book I read in September was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. When I tell you, it felt so good to get this off my physical TBR. I've put it on so many TBR videos, never got to it because I've just put it off and put it off and put it off. The fact that it doesn't have the best reviews was really putting me off reading it. But to say that, I did give it a 3 star. I still enjoyed it, it just wasn't my favourite. So, The Spanish Love Deception. It's going to actually be really hard to tell you what this is about because I literally barely remember anything about this book. That's probably why I gave it 3 stars. I literally wrote in my journal it wasn't very memorable, which I still stick by. Catalina has a wedding coming up and she's told her family that she's going to be bringing her boyfriend, her American boyfriend, which doesn't exist. So Aaron Blackford offers to stand in the imaginary boyfriend's place and pretend to be her boyfriend for the wedding. And at first Catalina's like, no, this isn't happening, I don't like this man. She's so adamant on the fact that Aaron hates her when he quite clearly doesn't, which got a little bit annoying at times, but you know. And eventually they do agree to go to this wedding together and pretend to be with each other. I thought I was going to love this because it is fake dating, it's a summery romance, but I just didn't love it as much as I was hoping to. The thing is with this book, I did enjoy it, I had a fun time while reading it, it just wasn't anything special and wasn't very memorable, so I gave it 3 stars. And also with this book being like over 400 pages, you could definitely feel that it was over 400 pages. It felt way too long, it dragged on, and I loved Aaron though. Aaron Blackford, when it gets to summer I would recommend to read this book because it is perfect for those vibes. The summer romances when I first started reading in September just wasn't going great, but I read It Happened One Summer, which I also gave 3 stars. Still enjoyable again, but not very memorable. This is about Piper and Brendan, and basically Piper is a famous woman, she's an influencer, and her reputation gets damaged a little bit, so her stepdad, I think, sends her to Westport, Washington to run her father, who has died, bar. And when she gets to this place, she goes with her sister, which one thing I will say about this book, I did enjoy the relationship between the 2 sisters. That was one of the positives for me. And they get to this town, everyone's sort of like, what are these women doing here? They don't fit in here at all. They're dressed like they're about to go to a party. They just do not fit into this environment. But Piper wants to prove these people wrong, so she tries to do that, but she ends up meeting Brendan, who, he kind of gave me the yick a little bit. He was very, like, sometimes I don't mind listening books when men are talking about the woman's looks a lot, but when that's all he's talking about, it's like, okay, there's no actual connection here, you're just attracted to the woman. I need more than that, you know. And this book just felt very sexual and there wasn't much depth to the relationship, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. But anyways, yeah, she meets Brendan and they get off on the wrong foot. I am still really excited to read the second book in this series because I did think it was a really fun book to read during summer, so definitely gonna read the second one next summer. When you're 200 pages into a book and you want to put it down, that's a sign that you're not loving it. So yeah, this was another one that kind of dragged a little bit for me. We're switching it up. I actually read a summer romance that I absolutely loved, and that is none other than Beach Read by Emily Henry. To be honest, this is one of them books where I read it, I was absolutely in love with it, and I was watching loads of TikToks about the couple and everything, but now I literally don't remember much about this book. I remember how much I loved the couple, I remember the feeling I had while reading it, and I remember the elements that I loved about it, but I don't actually remember everything that happened in this book. But it's still a 5 star because the way this book made me feel was like next level. I was kicking my legs, I was smiling like crazy. It was just a great experience and I would really like to reread this next summer. It's so fun to look back on what I thought about books, because I usually write these like straight after I read them. This is about January and Gus. They are two writers that write completely different genres, but they're both in a writing block. And January ends up moving next door to Gus. She has a little bit of a vendetta against Gus, but they do actually agree to write each other's genres and see who can make the best book, basically. See who can get published first. And I just love this book because it's a book about books. And the way this book was written, it wasn't just a romance, like, you could literally feel the emotions of the characters dripping off the pages. The love between these two characters was so beautiful and tender. It just, oh, it made my heart so happy. Yeah, some of the quotes in this really hit me like a ton of bricks. I was literally swooning so hard, like so hard. I think the reason why I love this book as well is because the characters weren't perfect. They were flawed, and I love it when characters are flawed and they have a backstory. It gives them so much more depth, and this just makes me so excited to read more Emily Henry. I've read Happy Place, which I gave a 4-star. Wasn't my favourite book in the world. This one, however, was phenomenal. Instant 5 stars when I finished it, just because of how it made me feel. It had like such fun elements as well as like deep elements, which just made it out to be such a good and incredible book. So yeah, I cannot wait to read Book Lovers and to reread this, because it's one of my absolute favourites. Oh, this is a fun one. The next book I read in September was The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. Now, it shocks me so much that this book is so lowly rated on Goodreads, because I just loved the chaos of this book. It was absolute chaos, and I was obsessed. I could not put this book down for the life of me. It was so addictive, it was so thrilling, like, oh, this was top notch. But this is basically about a writing retreat, obviously. So this famous writer holds this writing retreat and invites, I think it's 5 women to her house. And everyone is like starstruck over this. They're so excited to be a part of this writing retreat to learn from one of the best. But quickly the writing retreat turns sinister and everything goes crazy. And the plot twist in this, there's like a plot twist and a plot twist and a plot twist and a plot twist. It's crazy. You felt such an eerie, dark feeling. Such a page-turning book. I just thought this was a phenomenal thriller, and it really shocks me how lowly rated it is. So many people don't like this book. But I think what it is with this book is because it is so, I think the word you would use is camp, because it's so all over the place. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is my cup of tea. I love twisty thrillers, and that's exactly what this was. I also loved in this book, I don't really think this is a spoiler, but just gonna say that hopefully that it isn't. The feeling of all these women being trapped in this home and not being able to leave just instantly makes you feel claustrophobic, which I just thought the environment of this book was really good as well. I gave it 4 stars. Now, it was so hard for me to rate this book because I struggle so much to rate thrillers, because I don't know, I think it's because I'm not used to the genre. Romance I can easily rate, but thriller I do struggle with. But I did give it 4 stars. I'm not going to up it to a 4.5, but I think if I did reread it, it might go up a little bit because of how much I did actually enjoy this book. I've noticed with thrillers as well, one thing that I really love is complex female friendships. When there's like a group of girls and things are going wrong and it's complex, I just really enjoy that in thrillers. So yeah, I definitely recommend this one. The last book I read in September was 19 Steps by Millie Bobby Brown. I was so excited about this book. Very nervous though, because I'm not a lover of historical books. But I did give it a 3.5. I was kind of expecting it to be under a 4-star just because of the subjects in this book. But I will admit that I did actually learn some things with this book. Like, I had no idea about the incident in this book, which I found really good to learn and really sad and heartbreaking to read about. But this is basically, I couldn't even fully tell you what it's about because I don't really remember it. It's about Nellie Morris, who lives in Bethnal Green, which is like a small town in London, I think. And she has a best friend called Billy, who she's convinced she's probably gonna marry, even though she doesn't really love him like that. But she ends up meeting Ray, a handsome American airman. And because she was convinced that she was going to marry Billy, she starts to question everything because she's so in love with Ray. Something tragic happens with Jay basically, and yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to actually give this book a 3-star, which makes me really sad because just trying to explain this book, I don't really remember anything. The romances in this were so bad. Like, there was no depth. It was just insta love. They were instantly in love with each other, and it just didn't hit like I think Millie Bobby Brown was intending it to. Like, I did enjoy the message behind it though, like what it says on the front, love blooms in the darkest days. And one thing again that I absolutely adored about this book was the family. The family in this book made me so emotional at times. But this just wasn't my genre, and I didn't really take much in while reading it. I just remember how disconnected I was to the relationships, which were a main part of this book. I would have actually preferred it if it was just about Nellie and her family and the tragic incident, I think, because those parts I really liked and I found them very interesting. But yeah, it just wasn't my favourite, which is sad to say, but it's still a 3-star. It was decent, good for a debut, but yeah, not my favourite. We're going to be going into October now. Start off with the absolute winner of this month, so I think this was my only 5-star actually, which is none other than The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book was insane. It was phenomenal. Like, I was obsessed. This book is about Violet, and basically her mum is I forgot what she actually is it like I can't remember what her mum actually is, but she's very high up in this war college, and she basically says to Violet, no daughter of mine is going to be a scribe, you're going to be a rider, which basically means that she's either going to be a rider or she's going to die. There's no other option because she has to be a rider. So Violet is also very fragile. She has a syndrome called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which basically means that her bones are very fragile. She breaks her bones easily, she bleeds easily, so this makes up for a rider that's probably not going to succeed basically. But her mum doesn't care. She's like, no, you're going to be a rider or you're going to be nothing basically. So she goes to be a rider, and she has to go through all these trials and tribulations that are very deadly, which is just such a thrilling element of this book. You get so connected to Violet as a character and just feel so much fear for her at times, and I just loved her so much. So yeah, this book actually changed things for me because of how much I loved it, and I really need to read more fantasy, and this book made me realise this. But one thing about this book that I was literally acting like an idiot while reading it was the romance. Xander, oh my god, like, oh, the romance, like the enemies to lovers was giving, the tension was giving, the I'm gonna kill you was giving. Like, oh, this was so freaking incredible. One thing I did say in my reading vlog with this as well is the reason why I felt so connected to Violet, and the reason why this book hit me in such a different way, was because the fact that she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because I have Marfan syndrome, which is a very similar syndrome. So in some parts of this, even though it's like in a completely different world, I do not have a life like Violet at all, but I felt so connected to her as a character and some of her struggles. I just felt so seen while reading this. I have never in my life seen a powerful female character with a syndrome like this, because it is so rare. These syndromes that I have, that Violet has, are very rare. That representation just meant so much to me as a person. So yeah, I can't wait to read Iron Flame. I just follow Violet more. She just is one of my absolute favourite characters now. I just loved how powerful she was. She didn't care what people were telling her. She was like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I am going to become a rider, and I'm going to prove that just because I have this syndrome, I can still be a strong female. And yeah, I just loved her so much. So 5 freaking stars. I mean, come on, obviously it was expected. It's Fourth Wing. It's a phenomenon because for a reason. Like, it is so insanely popular for a reason. The twist in this, the way this ended, I was like, my reaction was insane. I was just like, literally jaw on the floor. Yeah, definitely read this. Next I read Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. Oh, this book was so heartbreaking. I can't believe that it was over 800 pages and I read it in 4 days. Because I was just addicted to it. But this is about Johnny and Shannon, and basically Shannon has not had an easy life. She experiences a lot of abuse in her household and she has been bullied. She just has not had it easy at all, and it made me so sad reading that. Like, I felt so disgusted and sad for her as a character because she's such a sweet person and I just wanted to give her a hug when she was experiencing these things. Johnny Kavanagh, am I saying that right? Hopefully. Is a rugby player and nothing will stop him basically. He meets Shannon and he's instantly addicted to this woman. Like, he's like, I need to look after this girl, she looks so sad, I need to protect her. And the way he protects her is like, had me swooning. Even though it's a little bit toxic at times, I still loved it. Like, he was like, this woman is mine, you cannot go near her basically, which I love that trope personally. But the relationship between these two characters is there's so much emotion between them. Like, it's not just a physical connection, there's barely even any physical things in this book, which it really shocks me that I loved it as much as I did, because it took them ages to even hug. Like, the slow burn was definitely slow burning, but I was addicted. And I think the reason why I was so addicted to this book is because I just felt so connected to the characters and I wanted to know that they were going to be okay, and I couldn't stop reading until I knew they were going to be okay. I cannot wait to read Keeping 13. The fact that I'm still holding off says a lot about my self-control, because I really want to read that book, but I'm holding back because I needed a little bit of a break. I need to read a couple books between. This book, after I finished it, I just felt, I don't know what the word would be, I just felt so down. Even though these are characters on paper, they made me feel so many emotions, and afterwards I think I was in a bit of a book hangover, I think you'd call it, where you just don't know what to do with yourself. That's basically what this book did to me. But please read this series. It took me ages to read it and I wish I didn't hold off for so long. I don't think I said what I rated this. I gave it a 4.5. So close to being a 5-star. It might end up being a 5-star depending on how I feel about Keeping 13. I don't know yet, but I will let you know. Let's just say it's got a broken heart on the cover for a reason. A bit of a mid one next, but we have You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel. I gave this book a 3.5. Not the best book I've ever read, but I think with this, the first like 150 pages, I was so bored. I was just like, oh my god, these two just need to break up. Like, I'm so sick of hearing them whining about the fact that she don't love this man. Like, ugh, it was kind of irritating at times. But the last 100 plus pages made me up this rating a lot more, because I did start to really enjoy this book and really enjoy the relationship in the book. It took a bit of time for me to actually somewhat get invested in the relationship. I still wasn't insanely invested, but it was just a fun time, and this book is great for the winter vibes as well. It was very cute and great for the winter romance vibes, and I did love the last 100 pages a lot. It's just a shame that the start ruined it a little bit for me. This is about Naomi and Nicola. On paper, they are the perfect couple, but they both have actually fallen out of love with each other, and because they don't want to be the one to break it off, they basically start to intentionally irritate each other. Eventually they both, because they've had this front with each other and haven't really been themselves around each other, when they start purposely irritating each other, they start to show their true colours, and they do start to fall back in love with each other, which was really nice to read when they was starting to be nicer to each other and starting to like each other again. Yeah, I did really enjoy that element, but I just think the start was very, very irritating. But yeah, it made me not root for the couple as much as I would have liked to. The next books I read were for my thriller video. The first one I read was The Last Word by Taylor Adu. This was, oh, this book was so thrilling. Like, I was kind of scared reading this a little bit, just because of, I think with this, again, this is another claustrophobic claustrophobic thriller where someone is trapped in a home, and they're fighting for their life basically, which just terrifies me. This is about Emma, and she is house sitting in this house which is in a very isolated area. She's also got her golden retriever for company, but she loves being in this isolated area because she's a big introvert. But one night she decides to read this book on her Kindle / e-reader, and it ends up being one of the worst books she's ever read. So she goes on Goodreads. I don't know if it's actually Goodreads, but basically she puts up a 1-star review of this book, and H.D. Cain, the author of this book, ends up emailing her basically saying, you need to take this book down or else, basically, and he threatens her and says that she needs to take it down, and it's her fault why no one's reading his book because he's an indie author, and because she's left this 1-star review no one's going to want to read it. Which, the thought of an author getting back to you is just, oh no thank you, I do not want to do that when I've rated your book low. I don't want to, no, that would be such an awkward encounter. You'd feel terrible, but at the same time, as a reader, you have that right to rate books and to tell people when you don't like a book, to help people with what they should read. So that's the whole point of reading a book. You've got that right to leave a review on it. But H.D. Cain was having none of it, and when she refuses to take it down, weird things start happening in her house. And I think the reason why this book was so scary as well was the fact that she had a dog. That just made it more scary. When he was in danger, I actually wanted to cry. I was literally at the page like, how could you do this to a dog? Leave the dog alone. Like, oh, that just made it that much more terrifying. I loved in this book as well that we get like little inserts of H.D. Cain writing a novel about Emma. Like, that just added such an element to the book, because we got like the point of view from the author and a point of view from the protagonist, which, yeah, it was just so interesting. I loved the way this was written, and I just cannot wait to read more Taylor Adams books. Give this a 4-star. Next book I read, which is one of my favourite thrillers ever, None of This Is True by Lisa Joel. I gave this a 4.5. This was so twisty. Again, this is another thriller that has a very complex female friendship, similar to The Right Retreat. Very different stories, but has a similar trope with the complex female friendship, which I absolutely love. Just loved the podcast elements. I loved how we got both point of views from the women. I loved how sinister it got and how twisty it got and dark. It was so good. But this is about Alex and Josie, and basically they bump into each other in this restaurant, and Josie basically says to Alex, hi, I'm your birthday twin. And then a couple of days later, Josie decides to ask Alex if she could be on her podcast, which is basically about women changing their lives. And Josie says, I haven't actually changed my life yet, but I'm going to be changing it, and I feel like this would be really good for your podcast so your viewers can watch me change. But eventually Alex quickly realises she should have never agreed to this. Who did she let into her home? She should have never let this woman into her home, because she quickly realises that it's a lot darker than she thought it was. Yeah, please read this. This was just, oh, I loved it so much. The next book I read was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister, which I gave this book 3 stars. This book is basically about a mother who sees her son killing someone out of her window, and the next morning she wakes up and it's the day before. So she's basically got to try and stop this from happening, stop her son from committing this crime. And every day she goes back and back and back and back in time, which just you felt so lonely while reading this book, because no one could remember what she could remember, and she just kept having to go back and back in time, and she just didn't know how to fix this. She thought that maybe she needed to fix the crime. She discovers more and more secrets. This book had so much potential, but I think what it is with this book is the twist in this didn't hit as much as I think they were intended to. One thing I did really admire about this book was how it all wrapped up. It was really, really good and was a really good twist. It just wasn't my kind of thriller basically, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. Next I read a really short one. This is Killjoy by Holly Jackson, which is basically a prequel to the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which was a 5-star series for me. This was just a little book that I couldn't really rate any higher than 3 star because there wasn't much to it. Just nice to be back with Pippa again. In this book we basically find out why Pippa falls in love with figuring out crimes and things like that, and she really enjoyed playing the detective in this book. And yeah, it was just a fun little murder mystery game. Last book I read, which I did actually finish on the 1st of November, I'm just going to involve it in this wrap up because I did start it on Halloween night. So this is The XX by Erin Sterling. This was absolutely adorable. I gave it 4 stars. I just think it was perfect for the spooky vibes. Now, I didn't give this a 4 star for the relationship, I gave it a 4 star for the vibe. This is basically about Vivian Jones, who decides one night when she's drunk with her cousin, I think it is. Yeah, her cousin. They decide to put a curse on Reese Penhauer. They thought it was just a joke. It's not actually gonna happen. They was just drunk and saying silly things around candles, basically. But they quickly realise when Reese decides to visit the town for a... I can't remember what it was for. It was some like big thing because their family is really known in this little town called Gravesglen. Quickly realised that the thing that they did when they were teenagers actually is true, and Reese Penhauer is cursed. Vivian Jones and Reese basically have to figure out how to stop this curse. Reese's life is kind of in danger because of this curse. Like, there was one scene, this isn't really a spoiler, but where this massive statue nearly falls on him, which would have quite literally killed him. But the vibes in this book, like, oh my god, I love the little town Gravesglen. It was so spooky. The witchy vibes, the curses, the magic spells that they had to do, everything about it was just so fun. And I did actually enjoy the romance in this book, but because it had like, because they were trying to figure out like how to stop this curse, that was kind of the main part of the story. So the romance took a little bit of a back burner. Not really, it was still really romance heavy, but there wasn't much depth to the romance. It was super fun and cute, and I still did very much enjoy the romance in the book, and I enjoyed the banter between the two. The witchy banter was so adorable, like, oh, it was so cute. And I just loved that this was very low stakes, but still had a lot of plot and fun things to do with it. Like, things that going wrong and magic and things like that. It was a nice romance book. I would really recommend this, and I cannot wait to read The Kiss Curse. So that was the last book. Oh, thank God, I don't know how people film these wrap-ups for so long. I get so sick of myself talking. But I'm not the best at these wrap-up videos, but I hope you still enjoyed the book. I hope you still enjoyed the video and like hearing all my thoughts on these books. I read some really good books, a couple 3 stars in there, but nothing under a 3 star, which is great. I feel like I have become more critical with rating books than what I did at the start. But yeah, it was a good couple 2 months, and hopefully I read a lot in November. But hope you all enjoyed this video. Give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below if you've read any of these books and what you thought on them. Subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!